So this month, I will be doing something a little bit different. For the month of August, I'm doing what I'm calling the Sharpening Your Axe Summer Series, nonprofit strategy sessions on sustainability. August is a great time to slow down, to go deep, to learn, to plan, and to prepare for the hustle of the end of the year. Just like Abraham Lincoln said, if you give me 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend 6 hours sharpening my axe. So, my goal with this series is to help you sharpen your proverbial organizational axe during the slower, somewhat days of summer. Each week, I'll be focusing on one of the core elements that make nonprofits strong: fundraising, boards, staff, finance, and organizational direction. Each week, I'll be sharing content that explores the theme from different angles, a combination of short form strategy tips, long form trainings that go deeper into some aspect of the theme, and always an encore podcast episode featuring me in more of a generative conversation with one of my incredible guests, exploring the theme from yet a third angle. These strategy sessions are fire. So grab a notebook, grab a pen, curl up someplace really comfy, and enjoy. This week is week number 1, and we will be focusing on sharpening your fundraising axe. I've got a great interview with my girl, Jess Campbell. I'm pulling from my in-house library to share a 6-minute strategy episode about how to leverage the fundamentals of donor psychology. And I'm resharing an incredible audio masterclass with one of my very favorite people in the world and a fundraising guru, Susie Myers-Jackson. All of the resources mentioned and some that aren't are available in the show notes at brookerichiebabbage.com/podcast. Hi, this is the Nonprofit Mastermind podcast, and I'm your host, Brooke Richie-Babbage. Each week, I do a deep dive into the mindset and strategies and tactics and tools of scaling an incredible high-impact nonprofit. I'm so glad you're here. I am beyond excited to kick off my Sharpening Your Axe Summer Series with Jess Campbell, a dear friend and the founder of Out in the Boons, a small shop helping nonprofits discover donors in their email list. Jess has been deep in this work for a long time. She's been a nonprofit fundraiser for 18 years and has raised over $17 million working from New York to California in organizations of all sizes. She is also the founder of the Raise More Together Summit for nonprofit leaders and fundraisers, which is coming up this month. If you're listening to this live, it's coming up in August, and she and I talk about it in the episode. So in this episode, Jess and I are going to be talking about end of year giving and how to think and plan beyond Giving Tuesday to actually set your organization up for the most expansive year-end season you've ever had. Jess and I are both practical and tactical. So this episode is heavy on the how do I actually do this, which I personally love. Grab a notebook and a pen and get ready to map out an incredible year-end season. Hey, Jess, how are you?
This is going to be so fun, Brooke.
I have been wanting to do this forever. I'm really excited to be having this conversation with you.
Oh, I feel honored. I know you mostly do solo episodes, so this feels like a real treat. And as I said, an honor to be able to be a guest on your show.
Yay. Well, let's dive in. I have been thinking a lot about and talking with a lot of folks about end of year giving. And I know that's top of mind for you too. And just offline, we've been talking about it. So I got the idea from you to call this episode, It's So Much More Than Giving Tuesday. So let's start there. That was your idea. Why did you say that?
Yes, I see it every single year that nonprofits put all of their eggs in the Giving Tuesday basket and then are wildly disappointed in the results. The fact of the matter is, Giving Tuesday, while yes, raised $3.1 billion last year, it's also the most competitive giving day of the year.
Right.
And the truth is, the studies and statistics and the data show that the most money is actually raised up until the very last day of December, specifically the last 3 days of the year.
The last day. That's right.
So if you're giving it all to Giving Tuesday, which I think falls in late November this year, you're just missing out on like critical days where people are still making donations and gifts. So that's why I say it's just so much more than just that one day. I would love people to reframe their thinking to that's the start. That's day one, maybe. And really, day one could be, we can talk about this too, because what I teach my clients is it really starts 60 days before that, where you're warming people up, you're preparing people so that they're rip roaring and ready to go.
Why do you think people get so fixated on Giving Tuesday? I mean, you and I both remember the days before Giving Tuesday when maybe there was a healthier relationship to end of year giving. Like what's changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think Giving Tuesday, the organization and institution, which is true, has done an amazing job of marketing the day. I think it also follows a set of Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So it's like the behavior people are purchasing, spending money. And then I also think like it's easy, right? It's easy to think that like, oh, I can just do this on Giving Tuesday and be done. Swipe, all good. And I wish it was that easy for nonprofits. Gosh, wouldn't that be a dream? But in reality, it just takes so much more effort and work.
Yeah. I also think that I hear a lot of FOMO with the folks that I talk to that even if they don't have a Giving Tuesday plan, there's this very deep fear that they're leaving money on the table, that they're going to be left behind, that everybody else is doing this thing. And there's almost this like pull.
Yeah.
Not as in the wrong direction, but like it's not necessarily in their best interest.
Right. I mean, but the truth is, I don't know if you counted. I am an email marketer and I coach people around end of year giving campaigns. And so I sign up for a lot of newsletters, but I had upwards of 50 emails on Giving Tuesday in my inbox alone. And so like it's competitive. And I always tell my clients, students, that I think that you should play in the game. Like you have to be a player in this donation seeking game, but I just wouldn't do it all in. I wouldn't put all my energy and effort in there. I always say, set a timer, give yourself 30 minutes, write the email, write the social caption, and then let it go. And then what will happen is the people who are in your world who want to give to you and are inspired for whatever reason to give on Giving Tuesday will do that action on that day, but you're not going to find new donors on Giving Tuesday. Like it's just not going to happen. They're already taken, which is why, again, the 60 days leading up is so important.
So let's talk about that. Let's zoom out and say, okay, Giving Tuesday is part of a longer, larger, broader plan.
Yes.
As people are thinking in a healthy way about end of year giving, what are the core areas of like prep that they should be thinking about right now? So we're recording about 5 months out before the end of the year. What should folks be thinking about?
I love this question.
Good.
So the world has changed, and especially over the last couple of years where people had maybe a little bit extra disposable income, people were sitting at home, people were really compelled to give back. That is not the landscape any further. And what has happened with this influx of new donors, especially over the last 3 years, is a lot of them have gone away. And so I really want nonprofits to focus on folks who have already given to them as a high priority. And summer is an excellent time to do that. So if it's been a while since you've looped back to your last year donors, your 2022 donors, and said, hey, this is what your $10 donation did. This is what your $250 donation did. Do that communication now. Nonprofits are unfortunately very undertrusted by the donor community. And it's for a big reason, because we just don't tell them what their money's spent on. And I frankly don't care if you say we bought a fax machine or fax machine. Do people even have fax machines anymore? People
the
bought
youngins listening going to be like, what is that newfangled, old fangled thing?
or you offered health insurance to your employees. Like,
Right.
people don't really, I find, care, but they do want to know that you're spending it on something worthwhile that's contributing to the impact. So I would do a loop back email. I would also thank with gusto your donors. That's the easiest thing to forget. And the data shows that people who are thanked with a handwritten note, a phone call, a personalized email, whatever it is, whatever you fancy, really goes a long way to retaining your donors. So I would really focus on that this summer, 5 months out. As you start to turn towards your campaign, I encourage people to gather folks in a virtual way, very low lift, and do what I like to call some vision casting. I want you to talk about what you've been doing over the last 6, 7, or 8 months. And then I want you to paint a picture forward over 6, 12, 18 months. I want you to talk about impact. I want you to tell stories. I want you to let people ask questions. And the most important thing I want you to do is I want you to plant a seed for how much that is going to cost. Maybe over the next 12 months, that might cost $1.2 million or $712,000. You're not going to ask for money, but you're going to start planting the seed, because the truth is, to create impact requires resources, AKA money. And people need to know about that. Then what I want you to do is...
Can I pause you there really quickly?
Of course.
So my head is just exploding with happiness right now. I love that you are saying this. So I want to say two things. One, I want to lift up and like really zero in on the strategic plan, or your strategic vision and priorities and goals, like the work that you've done as an organization to home in on what your vision for impact is in your strategic plan. If you've done it well, you have that content, right? Like, you don't have to be scrambling, be like, what should we tell them? Like, go to your plan, bring them into that document. And then for those listeners who've heard me talk about your true cost budget, your budget is the roadmap for achieving that impact. So you should also have those numbers. So at any given point, you should be able to look at your strategic plan, look at your budget. They should tell the same story, like a book, words and pictures, and be able to have that conversation with people. So I just like what you're saying. This is just gold. I also want to ask a question. When should that happen? So should people do that towards the end of the summer? Are you thinking like Labor Day, gather people?
Yeah, I would say anytime between late August and early October is
fantastic.
Fine.
Fall. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Love
and
it.
Just so we're clear, like, this is a Zoom call. The cost of admission is an email address. This is something that you can bring in to people that are new. This is something that your board members can send out to new folks or people who have aligned values. This is something you can share on social media. I also want to emphasize that the point is not that this is like attended by thousands of people.
Right.
Anyone who comes, that is a cherry on top, but it's more about the touch point. And it's about reaching out, not asking for money. It's about saying, hey, you are an investor in our organization. I want to tell you about what your money's been spent on and where we aim to go. This is an inside look. Like, you really want people to feel like they're getting this kind of peek behind the curtain, an insider's look. And bringing them, like you used, I think the words like along for the ride, like along the journey. So they're not like this separate thing. They're part of the puzzle.
Fantastic. Okay. What's next?
Okay. So then as you conclude your vision casting gathering, I really advise folks to create what's called a power statement. And that is something that you're going to use in your end of year campaign. It's what your money is going to raise money for. So it's something like, you have the power to insert impact when you help us reach the goal of $25,000 or something. It can be a variation of that. But let's say you are an organization that runs a social enterprise, getting people jobs, but you also do some resume coaching, and you also help people get closed to go on their first time interviews. Like, you have all these different programs, right? I I understand that general operating support is the most attractive for us nonprofit people out there raising
Yes.
money.
Yeah.
But specificity will raise you more money. And
Yeah.
so if you
And
want
those
to
two
pick,
things are not at odds. Like they are not
no,
mutually exclusive. Exactly.
no. And so as you're thinking about your power statement and you're thinking about your end of year campaign, I want you to decide what it is you're raising money for. And then I want you to start pointing people towards that in your content. So let's say like you're really trying to expand your social enterprise, which means you're going to need to hire more staff, you need more contracts, like you need more equipment, like whatever the things are. I want you to be telling stories of people who have received jobs and maybe used their first time job in your social enterprise as a springboard. I want you to introduce the staff people and the managers. I want, and so maybe your content is a little bit less about your wardrobe closet or your resumes, and it's focused on, so that way it's a natural progression. People have all the information, they felt inspired about this social enterprise. So then when you ask for money, it's not like, wait, they do that? It's like, oh, obviously, versus some people I see, they're out there like talking about their housing project and their food bank. And then they start asking for money around like their after school program. And you're like, whiplash, like, what? Like, it's like you just need to point people in the right direction with your content.
Yeah. I always talk with folks about when they're planning sort of their year end sort of arc to think of it, the whole thing, like one long story.
Story.
Exactly. And these are different parts of the same story. You don't want lots of different little stories, right? And I think that way it feels more coherent. Yeah.
I love that. The last thing I'll say about the content is consistency is very, very, very important. And nothing will get you unsubscribes and unfollows like ghosting people for many, many months, not communicating, and then suddenly showing up in their world asking for money at a very high frequency. So if you're a nonprofit listening and you're like, oh, it's been a minute since I've dusted off one of those emails or haven't really posted on social for a while, I'm going to tell you every day of the week to focus on email over social. It will have a much higher return on your investment. But start with one email a month and then maybe try and dial it up to 2. And then if you can work your way up to 1 email a week, that will be fantastic for come like December, where you are going to be asking at a higher frequency. And I like to ask through storytelling so it doesn't feel like such a punch, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I always use the analogy, like I get one of those, well, rest in peace, Bed Bath & Beyond, but I used to get one of those Bed Bath & Beyond emails in my inbox every day, if not multiple times a day. Do I ever unsubscribe? No, because I am familiar with them being there. But if like it happens to me constantly where I suddenly will get like several sales emails from a company that I don't recognize because they have not participated in that frequency. And I'm like, who the hell is this? Unsubscribe. The same thing happens with our nonprofits. If people haven't heard from you in a while and they do not recognize you, they're not going to feel great when you just start showing up, screaming at them with asks. So you got to warm them up. You got to prepare them. You got to like show up. And we just live in a world where it's not fair, but we are competing with, the Amazons of the world. And like people have a level of expectation for frequency and ease. And so I'm not saying you need to be Amazon. That's unrealistic, but I think that you do need to show up in a more consistent way leading up to your end of your giving season.
Yeah, I think, we talk about, particularly for small and growing nonprofits, which I know both of us work a lot with, those sort of growth stage organizations, shifting from transactional fundraising to relational fundraising. And that has always made a lot of sense in my head. But when I talk to some of the leaders that I work with, it feels wonky. They're like, I don't really, if I can just be in a safe space for a minute, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, what does that mean to like be in a relationship with these donors? I don't actually even know all of the donors. And so what I hear you saying is The transaction, when it feels transactional, it's you haven't heard from me, and now I'm asking for something. I'm going to send you this email, and I want a donation response. That's transactional. Relational is I'm letting you know what's going on. I'm updating you. I'm asking you some questions. I'm sharing some, like, that's what we do when we're in a relationship. We communicate, right? So that's just one way of illuminating what relational fundraising looks like. Don't be a stranger.
I love that. I love that. And that goes back to what I said before, which is like use these summer months to reach out to your donors and communicate with your donors for no reason at all other than to say, hey, and thank your donors. And I have never really understood a lot of the fear that comes up with fundraising. And to be honest, I think it's because I'm such a relationship-based fundraiser.
Really are. Well, you're just a relation-based person.
Oh, well, thanks. But it's also like the amount of times I've had to sit across from someone and ask them for money is so few and far between, because I go all in on the relationship, so that honestly, people have been like, we're thinking about $1 million this year. To me, that's right. I haven't had to ask. And so that's what happens. I will also just say this to folks. So every year I make roughly, I don't know, let's call it 50 donations of various sizes to organizations. Sometimes it's $10, sometimes it's $25, sometimes it's much higher. I can count on less than the fingers on one of my hands how many people actually send me a handwritten thank you note, actually call, actually even send me a donor survey, actually send me emails. It's like, honestly, people, like, do any one of these things and you will be ahead of 98% of the rest of the organizations. And even like, I'm not going to name names, but even these like large nonprofits with beautiful branding that we really admire, y'all, they don't do it either. And it's like, I know, such a missed opportunity. And so it's like, I see you, small nonprofit, mid-sized nonprofit, who's over there, your one person show, and you're like, okay, what do I invest my energy into? I'm telling you right now, this emails, gratitude, storytelling, like this kind of stuff is what's going to really make the difference when it comes to your asks down the road.
So just to drill down even more on this, because it's so critical, these sort of email, you and I were talking before we went on camera about the term email marketing, which we use. And I think it makes a lot of nonprofits like their eyes sort of freeze. We're just talking about the importance of emails as a tool and a vehicle for being in relationship with donors and potential donors. So if I'm a small nonprofit, let's say fewer than 10 people on board, and I know that the gold standard is an email a week, right? What am I writing about? Like what's in that email? And follow-up question, how do I not feel like, and you and I with our own newsletters have talked about this and worked on this, how do you not feel every week like you sit down, you're like, what the F am I going to write about this week? Like, what do they want to hear? Like, then it just feels like more work. And I feel like a lot of small organizations don't not do it because they don't understand how important it is. They're like, I don't know how to operationalize. I don't know what to talk about, and I don't know how to build it into my workflow. I know that's like a whole podcast in and of itself, but
I was just going to say,
advise?
So I think one of the things I want nonprofits listening is, first and foremost, you are not bothering people by putting an email in their inbox. I cannot tell you how many people write back to me and say, thank you for this email. I got so much out of this email. This is the most valuable email. You have the favorite newsletter I read every week. I feel that about other people's newsletters. I am not joking. And this is maybe a little bit because I'm an email nerd, but like Saturday mornings, I have a special folder where my favorite email newsletters go. Me
too. It's one of my favorite things to do with my coffee.
Yes, with my hot tea. I like covet the time to read them. So you're not a bother. I just want to say that, like, you are not a bother. The exception is I guess if you're putting out bad emails, but if you follow a formula that I'm going to share, you won't be doing that. The other thing that I see nonprofits get super hung up with is they try and put all these graphics and images in an email when the truth is text-based emails work best. There are studies, Next After is a resource.
Oh,
You can look up a
wow.
gajillion studies that they do that again and again and again and again prove that emails perform better, specifically when it comes to raising money, when there's no image, absolutely zero image.
Wow. Not even
So
images of like the people you've helped in the community. Wow. You guys
none,
can't see it, but Jess is really shaking her head right now.
none, no images.
Yeah.
I know that that can be like a real shock to the system. So a lot of times what I do with my clients is like, we'll have one image at the top and then a very heavy text-based email below that. And then you tell a story. People are
Yeah.
trying to feel good and get
Yep.
information and be informed and be inspired. And so if you can become a storyteller, my advice is always write as you speak. Sometimes
Yeah.
I know people do the trick of they'll like literally transcribe a voice memo that they send themselves, and then they'll just edit that copy and put it in the
Yeah.
email. So what can you tell stories about? I mean, I find that the everyday stories I tell, so the stories about me spilling coffee on my white shirt on my way to drop off my kid, me forgetting the lunch pail, me hating that I have to walk my dog for the 7th time in one day, like whatever the everyday stories are, and then making the transition back to the point is
Yeah.
really what everyone likes to read, because they like to see themselves in the stories they read.
Again,
It's
being
like,
in relationship. This is how we talk to friends.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I would say I've actually made a bit of a change in my email strategy over the last couple months. And I'm way less focused on my email open rates and way more
Mm,
focused on my click rates. Because at the end of the day, what we're trying to train our email lists to do is open and click, open and click. And
mm,
so a lot of times
mhm.
what I tell my clients to do is like tell 1/3 of the story in the email, and then have a button or a link that says to read more, go to our Instagram page. And then you link to the post on the Instagram page
Yes.
that has the whole story, or you link to the LinkedIn post, or you link to the blog post, or you link to the article that was published, or you link to the
Mhm.
YouTube video. Because we want people to open and click, so that come giving season, when they're
Yes.
opening and clicking to your donation page, it is not the first time they've ever practiced this behavior.
Love it.
Last thing I'll say about email is I think that there's real room for us nonprofit folks to have a little fun in our emails. And so I do things for my clients all the time. Like, one of my clients is this amazing volunteer-based organization called Chamber of Mothers. They are fighting for
You
maternal
just
rights.
posted about them. Yeah.
Oh, these women could rule the world, I'm telling you. And their work is around, maternal health, affordable childcare, paid family leave, heavy
Mhm.
kind of intense topics. So at the end of the emails, I always have a section that's like, I don't know if I title it like keeping it fun or keeping it real or something like that, but I'll link to like TikTok videos where like, the mom is, doing
Yeah.
something funny, or I'll link to a
Yeah.
podcast episode, or I'll just keep it light and fun, but also clickable.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
can't tell you, their click-through rates have like skyrocketed since we just
Yeah.
started doing this. And I think it also is like, oh, I know when I open the Chamber of Mothers email, I'm going to get value, but I'm also going to get some entertainment. And like, that is
Yeah.
worth it. So those are some hot takes.
I love this. So we've talked about email, talked a little bit about content.
Mhm.
Is there anything else about sort of magical content
Mm.
that you think is really important as people are mapping out this end of year strategy? I loved the chronological, like what to do to prep people to be ready to be asked. This focus on metrics is, of course, as you know, the Virgo in me loves that. The email marketing, we won't call it email marketing, the email relationship building strategy is key.
Yeah.
What's the content behind that? And we've talked a
Mm.
little bit about it.
Yeah. So the other thing I hear from nonprofits all the time, which is just makes me smile, is like, well, we can't tell that story. We told that story last month. And it's like,
Yeah.
What? Like, it will never, ever, ever get old. If you're a dog rescue, you telling the story of a dog going home for their forever home. Tell that story every single day. It will never get old. Do you work
Yeah.
with students who in a tutoring program talk about them,
Every day,
making
all the time.
it will never, ever, 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 one more time, ever get old. And I don't know why nonprofits are always feeling this need, this pull to like evolve. Because
Yeah.
think about it, like Nike, tell me what their slogan is. They've had the same slogan for
Forever.
like 53 years.
And it
They
works.
have
It's
a
fantastic. Yeah.
bajillion-dollar marketing budget.
Yeah.
They're not changing. No.
No.
It takes
And all of
repetition.
their content is like people running up a mountain, always. Like
The same
that's
thing.
what it is.
Just
It's
do
great.
it. No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be Nike,
Yeah.
just say the same story again and again. I think
Yeah.
other stories though that are interesting, if you
Mhm.
really need like some content pillars, I think the origin story of an organization is always
Mhm.
interesting. I think
Mhm.
telling stories of your staff or volunteer or like their experience with the program through
Mm.
their lens is always interesting.
Mm.
I think anytime there's a story where maybe there's some story arc where there's either some struggle or some and struggle's not even the word, like the reason someone came to your program and then where they are now. What
Right.
is that story?
Transformation. Yeah. Story. Yeah.
Thank you. Transformation.
Yeah.
That will never ever get old.
Get old.
Not once.
I love it.
And so I actually recommend you just tell that same story, maybe through the lens of a different person or animal or place or whatever it
Mhm.
is that you do, again and again and again and again and again.
I love it.
That's it.
So this week, last week, and next week, I think these 3 weeks, tickets are on sale for what is one of
Yeah.
my absolute favorite conferences ever. And what we're talking about is going to be a huge theme, right? Raise more together, raising
Mhm.
more money for our people and our communities and our impact. It is an amazing conference put on by you and the amazing guests. Who's that conference for? What is it about? And how can people find tickets? Because literally, folks, everything we're talking about here, we're going way deeper in this conference. And
Yeah.
some of the speakers are just fire. They're just amazing.
Yeah.
So who's it for? What's it about?
Yes. So this is the 6th round that we've hosted Raise More Together.
Really? I didn't
Yes.
realize. That's amazing, Jess.
And thousands of fundraisers later,
Yeah.
this is for the nonprofit leaders and fundraisers who have some sort of responsibility of raising money for their organization. And this
Yeah.
year's theme is all about closing your fundraising year strong. And I am a real practical girly. I'm a tactical, practical girly. I love a good action step. And so I understand through experience how busy nonprofit leaders and fundraisers are, which is why we make our summit the way it is. It's a combination of both some live sessions and pre-recorded sessions so that, if you cannot sit and watch 20 YouTube videos, guess what? We have a private podcast and you can listen while you're on the go and still get super valuable information. Each session is no more than 15 minutes long. So it's like quick, actionable, get to the point. We keep it so super fun. We have bingo and prizes. We've got really great conversations with actual nonprofit fundraisers, actual grant makers, actual fundraisers, telling you what it's like, boots on the ground. And I just feel so honored that every year people like you, Brooke, say yes to this crazy thing I ask them to do, and you bring it. Everyone brings it and is sharing their latest and greatest strategy around what they see working right now. So this isn't like old information or over the head information. And so if you're a nonprofit that really wants to raise the most amount of money this end of year season, if you're a nonprofit that is just super craving being around other nonprofit fundraisers who are going to
Yeah.
get it. If you're a nonprofit who's looking for some on-site advice around like your Instagram profile or your end of year emails, guess what? We're going to be doing live audits. This is the summit for you. It's $27 to join, which is like
amazing
bananas
to me. Yeah, it's crazy. Wonderful.
And so many free resources. It's really great. And it's August 16th through the 18th. And all are welcome.
I will include the link to sign up in the show notes, as well as a bunch of next after and a bunch of the stuff we've talked about. I just want to put in sort of one more plug for the conference. I am also a practical, tactical girly. And, those of you who listen to me are not surprised by that. And one of the reasons that I did not realize there were 6 years of this, but I've loved every year that I have seen. And I'm really honored to participate this year as a presenter. It is quite possibly the best blend in our sector, right, for this topic of strategy and tactics that I've seen, right? It is both how to think about this, what are the frameworks, and okay, let's execute. So that's my plug. It's going to be great. Link in the show notes. Jess, how can people learn more about your work, sign up for your newsletter, and connect with you?
Yeah. So as Brooke said, I do put a lot of effort into my newsletter, and you can go to outintheboons.me/newsletter. And then, if you're going to come to Raise More Together, I know Brooke will put her link in the show notes, but raisemoretogether.co. We'd love to see you in a few weeks. And otherwise, catch you on the socials, Out in the Boons. Come find me.
Amazing. LinkedIn, Instagram. You have a great Instagram feed. Jess, it is always so much fun talking to you. I'm glad we finally got to do it on camera.
I know. Thanks for having me. I know.
This is a great conversation, and I will see you next week live. Bye. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of the Nonprofit Mastermind podcast. I always have so much fun doing these episodes. Definitely check out the links to all of the goodies that I mentioned in this episode. You can get that at brookerichiebabbage.com/podcast for the show notes. And if you enjoyed this episode and think that you have a friend or colleague who would also enjoy, I would love if you would leave a review and share. Have a great week.